I sat across from my mother at the small cafe, the quiet clinking of glasses and the murmur of conversations surrounding us. Her face was a mask of frustration as she spoke, her voice cracking with emotion. My pension is small, and there's hardly any cash left from your dad's estate. It's impossible to make ends meet. I stared at her, my heart heavy with a mix of disbelief and anger. The woman who had always demanded so much from me, who had spent years controlling every aspect of my life, was now pleading for my help. Her words fell like stones, sinking into the pit of my stomach. It's not my problem, I thought, but I didn't say it aloud. My mother continued, wiping her eyes. I can't keep up with the house. Your sister Judith, well, she's useless too. She doesn't do any housework or cleaning at home either. I couldn't help it. I laughed. It felt strange, almost out of place, but I couldn't stop myself. She never did, I muttered under my breath, and my mother's face hardened. She didn't hear me clearly, but I was sure she understood the meaning. What did you say? She asked sharply. I shook my head, not wanting to engage. Nothing. Just funny, that's all, I said, trying to dismiss the subject. Her husband had never known the truth. The secret she had kept from him, how she had hired a maid to do all the work around the house, was something that had only come to light after most of the money had disappeared. I couldn't help but feel a tiny sense of satisfaction. Finally, the truth had come out. I leaned back in my chair, taking a sip from my drink. You never seemed to care about any of this before, I said, my voice dropping. Why now? Why should I help you after all these years? Her eyes narrowed. Don't lump me in with Judith. What's the difference between you two? She snapped. I froze, the words slicing through me like a cold wind. The difference? I repeated, barely able to keep my voice steady. You raised me to do everything. I was the one who cleaned, who cooked, who took care of you. And now, when I finally had enough, you're asking me to come back? My mother's face turned bright red. She stood up suddenly, shaking with anger. You're abandoning me. After everything I did for you. How can you be so ungrateful? I looked at her, the years of resentment bubbling to the surface. Ungrateful? I said softly, more to myself than to her. You never cared about me. Not truly. Not once. I gripped the glass in front of me, my fingers tightening around it. My heart pounded in my chest. But I stayed calm, my voice steady as I said, No, I won't come back. I'm not your servant anymore. The words stung, but I had to say them. My mother's shocked expression was like a mirror reflecting everything I had never dared to say before. The silence between us stretched, suffocating and thick. I couldn't breathe for a moment, but when she opened her mouth to argue again, I didn't let her. Before I even knew what I was doing, my hand moved. I splashed the water from my glass onto her. The sound of it hitting her face was like a gunshot in the quiet cafe. Her eyes widened in shock, and for a moment, neither of us moved. The glass fell from my hand, the liquid dripping down her clothes. Oh my God, I'm sorry, I whispered, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. But the apology was hollow. There was no remorse in my heart. It was her own doing. She started to cough, sputtering. What did you do? She gasped. I stood there, frozen for a moment, unsure if I should apologize again. But before I could think, I did it again. Another splash of water straight into her face as she tried to speak. This time she coughed violently, choking on the shock and the water. I had no sympathy. It was as though something inside me had broken open. Oops, my hand slipped, I said, the words coming out with a strange calm. The waiter rushed over, looking concerned, but I waved him off, not caring. The tension between me and my mother was palpable. She was staring at me, her face a mix of disbelief and outrage. The cafe had fallen into an awkward silence, the other patrons pretending not to notice. I'm sorry, I said again, barely holding back my laughter. It wasn't real. The apology was just a way to avoid confrontation, but it didn't feel like enough. I'll clean it up. The waiter brought a mop, wiping down the floor. I grabbed the towel from him, giving it to my mother with a sneer. Why don't you clean yourself up? She gaped at me, her eyes wide with shock. You're soaking wet, she snapped, her voice rising in a panic. I could catch a cold from this. I looked at her, my face deadpan. What does it matter? You never cared if I caught a cold, did you? You never cared about anything except what you could get from me. Her face went pale and she opened her mouth to argue, but I was done. Enough, I said firmly. You haven't cared for me, ever, and you still don't. The words hung in the air, sharp and final. The silence that followed was deafening. But in that moment, I finally felt free. I looked her in the eyes, watching her face shift from shock to something I couldn't quite place. Fear, perhaps, or maybe regret. But it didn't matter. I wasn't going to stay. I stood up, pushing my chair back with force, making a decision I'd been avoiding for too long. I'm leaving, I said, turning toward the door. Wait, my mother cried, reaching for me. Please, don't leave me. I'm sorry for everything. Please don't go. I paused, my hand on the door, but didn't turn back. Goodbye, I said, my voice cold and steady. I stepped out of the cafe, the cool air hitting me like a wave. I was shaking, but it wasn't from fear. It was from something else, something I couldn't explain. I was finally free, and it felt right. Days passed, and the world outside seemed so much larger now. I had moved into a new apartment, a beautiful luxury flat I had purchased with the winnings from the lottery. It felt like a dream. I had won, in the most unexpected way. But more than that, I had won my freedom. It had all started the day I had been kicked out of the house. That was the day the newspaper had printed the lottery numbers, and something inside me had clicked. For the first time in my life, I had felt hope. Hope for something different, something better. When I showed my mother the photo of the apartment, her face twisted in disbelief. That's your place? She asked, her voice thick with disbelief. You can't possibly have the money for that. Actually, I won the lottery, I said, watching her face turn pale. Her jaw dropped, and for a moment, I felt a sense of power, of control that I had never known before. The woman who had always held so much power over me, who had controlled my every move, was now powerless. How could you do this without telling me? She asked, but her words felt hollow. I smiled softly, the weight of everything that had happened lifting from my shoulders. I didn't need to tell you anything, I replied. I don't need you anymore. I've made my own way. I walked away that day, leaving my mother and sister behind. I had no intention of ever looking back. And yet, a few days later, my phone rang again. It was my mother. Let me live with you, she begged. We could take care of each other. I didn't even hesitate. No, I said firmly. I'm done. Judith also called, begging me to take care of the house, to send money, but I refused. Family is just strangers, I said, hanging up the phone. I blocked both their numbers, and just like that, they were gone from my life. No more guilt, no more manipulation. Life continued, and I began to see the results of my decision. My health had improved dramatically. I no longer had to worry about getting sick because of the stress. The life I had imagined, free from the constant tension and control, was finally mine. It wasn't long before someone else came into my life, a man who saw me for who I truly was, not who my mother and sister had tried to make me. He asked me out, and it wasn't long before we were in a serious relationship. He proposed, and we planned to marry next year. I couldn't help but smile as I looked at a photo of my father. It felt like he was smiling back at me, approving of the choices I had made. Family, I thought, is more than just blood. It's the people who truly care, the ones who support you even when you're at your lowest. And finally, I had found mine,